The latest addition to the sci-fi RTS series Homeworld is on its way with number 3 finally on the horizon. Well, as big RTS fans, we were lucky enough to try out Homeworld 3 at Gamescom ourselves, and thanks to Gearbox Publishing for sponsoring us, we can bring you guys the rundown and our impressions for this new real-time strategy game where you'll be controlling your own fleet in space. There's also a link in the description if you want to check it out for yourself, but first, let's go over what Homeworld 3 exactly is. It's a spacefaring RTS being developed by Blackbird Interactive and being published by Gearbox. Number 3 continues the story of the series but is set 100 years into the future. With the discovery of hyperspace travel, a golden age of prosperity and trade has been brought into the Hygaran Empire. However, it's also uncovered a galaxy-spanning mystery known as the Anomaly. Karen Stjett, a legendary neuroscientist and fleet commander, was set out to discover the origins of this anomaly, but she never returns. So now we will take on the role of her descendant, a scientist and newly appointed fleet commander for this mission. It's up to us to discover exactly what the anomaly is, as well as what happened to our ancestor. And you'll be doing all of this while battling the Incarnate, a mysterious faction originating from the far reaches of anomaly space. Well, Homeworld 3 is targeting a release in February of 2024 and will be on Steam and the Epic Games Store. But how does the game play and what can you expect from it? It's set entirely in space where you'll be commanding and building up a fleet of ships as you collect resources, research, build, and command your own fleet with all different roles to play. The game world itself is in all 3 dimensions, meaning you can go above and below obstacles and debris, allowing for a greater degree of tactical complexity when approaching enemy ships. The game also features massive strategy terrain elements, which you would usually only see in the skybox of other RTS games, but this time you could actually implement them into your strategy with things like asteroids, abandoned space stations, and even shipwrecks of larger ships that can be used to your advantage. One thing you might be interested in is how the game utilizes its true simulated ballistic system, meaning instead of combat success being based purely on probabilities and chance, only bullets that visually make contact with the hull of an enemy ship will count as a hit. This can be further explored via the use of formations for your ships, as well as stances, which determines the pilot's behavior and tactics, and ranges from more aggressive, reckless playstyles to more opportunistic, evasive pursuits, which you can set up with your own groups of ships that you create and designate. There's a variety of different ship types that you can research and produce, all with their own strengths and weaknesses, and these can be further improved with additional research to unlock abilities or buffs unique to their ships. As an RTS fan, we're always curious about what game modes will be available in titles like this, and personally I love a good single player campaign. Not just to get to grips with the game itself before jumping into something like multiplayer, but also to explore the story and lore of it. At launch for Homeworld 3, we'll have a story campaign to play, but also a more traditional skirmish multiplayer mode for both PvE and PvP, but there's also a new game mode called War Games. This is a co-op mode for up to 3 players that has a 3-mission format, and the objectives are randomized. It's heavily inspired by roguelike games, and there'll be waves of ever-increasing enemies putting pressure on you to gather resources, build up your fleet, and complete these objectives before hyper-jumping to safety and to the next mission. Interestingly, going back to the roguelike inspiration for this new mode, you will find power pickups known as artifacts. These are what offer the roguelike gameplay, giving you a choice between 3 randomized power boosts that can shape the way your fleet builds and plays. Each mission within the mode gets more difficult than the last, with the 3rd and final mission culminating in a boss fight. A cool thing to note is that the Incarnate faction, the main antagonists for the game's campaign, will actually be playable within the War Games mode on launch, while for post-launch, the game is set to have support for DLC, as well as a big push for mod support, which is also a good thing and something that developers should definitely be praised for supporting. But what did we think about the game ourselves having played it? Well, both myself and Vestmore have given this a go, and I think it's fair to say we both enjoyed this much more than we thought we would. RTS games can definitely take a while to get the hang of, especially ones with the complexity of 3-dimensional space. But the intuitive controls really clicked for us quite quickly, and it wasn't too much of a struggle to get going. The biggest learning curve was probably the camera controls given the freedom of movement, but after a few minutes you did get used to it. Vestmore also got to play about an hour of this with another player in co-op, and the first thing you do when you jump into the game is customize your fleet colors, which to our surprise gave you a full RGB spectrum as well as different icons to pick, giving you a bit of personalization to your fleet. After this, you then pick from a list of preset fleet types. This is kind of like the faction that you're going to play, which dictates what kind of ships you're able to build during the game as well as your starting buffs. And to be fair, most of these were locked in the demo version, but we could see that through progressing and playing more and leveling up, you would unlock different options. Once in the game, we actually found the game mode to be fairly intuitive. It required both communication with your teammates, but it was also straightforward enough to get the gist of what's going on and what needs doing. Gathering resources was of course the first thing that needed doing, but it wasn't long before missions started popping up requiring us to take out an enemy ship that's escorting our mission target. And then we found and captured our first artifact, which gave us a choice of 3 power-ups. We picked one that increased the movement speed of our interceptors, which streamlined us towards a more fast-moving hit-and-run playstyle, in contrast to Vesmor's teammate, who was playing a heavier but slower-moving frigate-based strategy. Interestingly, the longer that the mission went on, the more resistance you would encounter, which for us highlighted our choice of the relic being very valuable, as it allowed us to complete objectives more quickly and then move on. We really enjoyed the balancing act of getting resources while also working towards the main objective, while also making sure our carriers were defended. Each of these missions offered a different challenge, and it did make it feel quite fresh and engaging, with different mission types such as destroying an enemy fleet, capturing their base, rescuing a captured civilian craft, or assassinating a high-value target. Perhaps one of the things we found most fun though was actually the coordinating with a co-op partner to try out different strategies and to see what would work with our own faction choice, as well as how we can complement each other. This is definitely going to be a fun game to play with friends or to make friends in and team up with. The final mission of the run is to take out a large battle cruiser, and afterwards there was a nice after-action report giving details on kills, units built and lost, etc., which was ultimately quite a nice touch. Overall, I think it's safe to say that we found this experience to be a refreshing take on the more classic RTS game modes, and we really think anyone craving a well-built RTS will enjoy themselves with Homeworld 3 if you enjoy a sci-fi space setting. And if you want to check the game out for yourself, there is a link down below that you should definitely give a click. And we think you might like the 2 videos on screen now. We have loads of stuff coming your way soon that you won't want to miss out on. So check these 2 videos out and then tell us what you think in the comments down below.